second episode of the Let's Talk podcast. I'm Caleb here with Mason, Collier, and Sarah, and today we're going to be talking about Chapter 15s of media marketing and self-branding. And later we're going to be interviewing Ben Erkens, which was a national championship winner here at Clemson Soccer, and now works as a pro and experience director at Pickleball Greenville. Was a little I guess, a top golf for pickleball. But getting into the Chapter 15 talk, one of the most important things they say in the chapter about a brand is how they market themselves with fan relations and how the fans see them. And one of the most important things is building a strong connection with those fans. So even when your brand gets a rough time, the fans will stand by you and still support you and support your branding. So can you guys think of any examples of a brand showing this?
One brand that I can think of right off the bat is gonna be Nike. Nike's portrayal of its athletes over the years has usually been positive, but there was one instance where it got a little bit of negative feedback. That was mainly because Colin Kaepernick, he was, for those of y'all who don't know, 49ers football player in the NFL. He decided to kneel during the national anthem, and that caused quite a controversy. Fans were not very pleased. They took to burning his jersey, in which he had the Nike emblem on a lot of them. And Nike, instead of saying that was not the best thing or whatever, or he was a little out of line, Nike decided to stand with him. And I think that says a lot about the brand because they didn't care. At the end of the day, they're like, I'm standing with my guy, I'm standing with my team, I'm standing with my boys. So they kind of kept that, they kept that motto going. So at the end of the day, Nike still has a huge outreach. I mean, people still today, they show up in Nike shorts. You got little league teams and their little Nike baseball, uniforms and everything. You got all the soccer players repping their Adidas and Nike on a day-to-day basis. Little Nike black running shorts, especially the girls. I used to play soccer, so I will say that. I did like my Nike shorts at one point. But we don't really care about it, because Nike is just kind of like one of those brands that it's loyal, it's honest, so people trust it. What do you guys say about that, boys?
I agree 100%. Personally, I think it would take Nike doing something really bad for me to stop wearing all their stuff.
I'd agree. They've built such a strong image that it's essentially impossible for anyone to walk away from Nike, which is
Exactly.
a privilege for them for sure, because there's a lot of other companies who don't really share that privilege. For example, one I would say would be Under Armour. Back in probably 2012, 2013, Under Armour was at its peak. You could think about golf, think about Jordan Spieth. Um, they were dominating the golf industry as well as a bunch of other industries. And ever since then, they've slowly gone into decline, and that's for a mix of different reasons. One of the biggest reasons is because, their original market was top athletes in their class. And so if you wanted to wear Under Armour, you'd consider yourself, oh yeah, I'm a great athlete, I'm good at what I do. And wearing the logo itself was almost like a prideful logo to wear. And where they kind of messed up was they started trying to enter the casual wear scene. And so they just had a bad marketing ploy trying to go from, if you wear Under Armour, you're an elite athlete, to you wear this casually. And so that's really one thing that messed them up a lot. On top of that, they also had some pretty bad women's marketing. They were late to the scene when it came to dominating the women's market. Companies like Nike and Lululemon kind of became dominant in that. And then when Under Armour tried to get into the women's scene in 2018, it was already completely full, so they didn't really have a chance. And one of the biggest reasons at the end is they've really never caught traction with the larger athletes when it comes to endorsements. So let's say for Nike, they have Jordan and they have LeBron. And you think of those two as GOATs, and you're and also Cristiano Ronaldo. And so you think of Nike as oh, this is a top tier brand. And then come to Adidas, you have Messi, also one of the greatest in sports ever. And then you come to think of Under Armour and you're like, well, I can't really think of anything. Come to find out they have a line with Stephen Curry. And you're like, well, how have I never heard of this? He's one of the greatest at his sport. Um, but they just had a not a very good marketing ploy when it tried to sell the things that are associated with the big names. Their last big name probably being Jordan Spieth.
Mhm. Well, I guess you can, I'll agree with that. You could also say the same thing. Like, while Adidas did a bunch of like marketing and tried their best to like go into different avenues, there's other companies that like just don't try at all, and they end up like flopping. There was an old brand, I think in the early 2010s, called and Ones, and they primarily like did basketball clothing, and they never really adapted out of that, and all they did was just try like all they did was only sell basketball clothing and nothing else, and it just became sort of like a fad. Like it was like super popular, and then like just like went like out of style completely. So like you could say like Adidas, while it wasn't successful, at least they tried to like market to other people. While I believe that like if you don't even put your foot out and like out the door, then like you're never gonna find success.
Yeah. I think a great example of like expanding into new markets and creating a new brand for yourself would be Adidas. I think Adidas has done like a wonderful job with that. If you look like at who Adidas is endorsed, first of all, you can look at soccer. Adidas pretty much dominates the soccer market. Like if you're gonna play soccer, you want to be wearing Adidas. They sponsor huge clubs like Real Madrid, Manchester United, and then national teams like the biggest ones such as like Germany and Argentina.
The world.
And that yeah, and they also do a good job of marketing like individual players. Like let's say like you want to think that Nike dominates the basketball world, but Adidas does a good job of mitigating how much Nike can like dominate that market itself. Like you take Adidas and they've signed like some big names such as James Harden, Damian Lillard, and new to the scene now, Anthony Edwards. And so having these guys on your team, um, it really creates a brand image for what you're trying to do. And one of the things that I think Adidas did best was they didn't just stay within um, the sports world because there is a lot of money to be made in the sports world. But if you look at Jordans, that's probably one of the biggest things that Nike's ever done. It went from a basketball shoe to probably the most bought streetwear shoe of all time. And so Adidas kind of done something similar to that, where they sponsor other rather than doing athletes, they sponsor celebrities. So like you can look at well, now this is a little bit controversial. It was popular at one time, the Yeezy line for Adidas, which is Kanye West's. And then you like they have other things like the Human Race shoes with Pharrell Williams, and then they have other shoes and shirts with Bad Bunny, Beyonce, and Prada. So Adidas and Nike, in particular, have done a great job of starting originally at a good sportswear brand and expanding that to where when you think of Adidas or Nike, you don't think strictly of basketball or soccer. You think of a brand as in they sell any type of clothing for any type of person trying to do anything.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think Adidas has now kind of taken on, and Nike, they've taken on kind of like streetwear. People just wear it on a daily basis. You know, you don't have to be athletic. You don't have to be like the top athlete to wear it anymore. One brand that I think has significantly flopped over the years is Puma. Puma, when it first, took off, a lot of people bought it, had a huge fan engagement, but I gotta say, I have seen very little commercials recently for that. I don't know if it's because people just aren't interested in the brand anymore as a whole. I don't really see any big, sports fanatics or like sports players really backing the brand anymore. It was more of a tennis brand. I mean, I don't see Tiger Woods. I don't see like any of the big golfers wearing that. I think Puma's just significantly fallen off. Like I see it now as like maybe occasionally like a tennis skirt. Like I have one Puma white tennis skirt, aside from my Lulu and Fabletics ones, but I think it's fallen off as a whole. Like nobody wears it anymore. It's not
Hmm.
streetwear. It's not even like really athletic wear. Kind of like gone. Would y'all agree that Puma kind of like obliterated off the face of the earth, or is that a hot take?
Yes, I would totally
Yeah.
agree. I think one of those reasons is because um, not every company can dominate every market like the Nikes and Adidases. So I'll go back to golf for a second and talk about, let's say, FootJoy. FootJoy is, if you play basketball, you have no idea what FootJoy is. But if you go to the golf world, they found their niche in the golf world. They're the number one seller of golf shoes, um, and it, over Nike, over Adidas, over Puma, over any other company that dominates golf in any other type of wear. And then you look at Peter Millar. It doesn't dominate soccer, it doesn't dominate basketball, but it does dominate the golf world as well. It dominates the high, expensive, more top of the line wear. And so I think it's important for brands to find their niche if they're not going to be trying to dominate every single part of their domain that they're in. So finding niches for companies is very important. And going back to what I said about Under Armour earlier, they kind of lost their niche by trying to go into streetwear and not focusing on having top athletes wear their brand.
I completely agree with that because Puma, they just weren't able to keep it up. They lost their engagement. People just kind of like adopted, new fashion trends, which Nike, again, and Adidas, it stays pretty constant. I don't see it going out of style in the years to come, despite fashion trends, fluctuating and then going back down. There's really no way that they could fall off because they have all these professional athletes backing them on a day-to-day basis and they have all this revenue coming in. I just don't see like the market dropping substantially unless like the market was to collapse, and the likelihood of that is not very high right now.
Yeah, I agree
Right.
100%. And I also think something that needs to be talked about more of how like Nike and Adidas use like more social media marketing than like any other brand. Because I know the reading talks about how important that is, and I think Nike is like one of the best brands to do it. Because like on like no matter what website you're on, like even like when you're driving around, it's like billboards, ads, like they're everywhere, and you'll see them like promoting themselves in like different ways across like every like commercial. Like I remember like usually when Jordan like first came out, like Jordan were releasing like a basketball shoes, and they released a bunch of like ads saying like how people are wearing them on like the street and just like showing them off like normally and like using them outside of like basketball like related activities. Then people started going like, oh, I can just wear those shoes whenever. Like that's like what they're trying to like put out now. And I think Nike's like one of the best companies to do that, along with like showing other ads of how like all like their best athletes. You see like LeBron in there, Jordan in there, like Durant, like all their like top athletes wearing them, and it's just like really like showing off like who they are as like a brand, like to their fans.
Nike's just so versatile, honestly. You got, when it comes to females, they got their little Valentine's Day collab collection they did with the pink and the red. They got like their high tops. You got what are they called, guys? Help me out. The shoes. They're not high tops, but they're like help me out.
Converse,
I don't know.
Not Converse. There's like this specific brand of shoe by Nike, and they're sick. I just don't know
Dunks.
what are they, guys?
Describe what they look like.
Like they're at the mall. Like any like hat store you go into, like jersey store, like lids, they're there. I just don't know what they're called. So I'm having a blonde moment disregard.
Yeah, I
Anyways.
mean, I think one of the things that Nike does well is like they pride themselves on not really being comfortable as a company. I mean, that's probably why they've um, been so successful. Like they're not really afraid. They know that they're kind of a powerhouse in their domain, and so they're able to step out of their comfort zone and make some political just like statements in the public and have their brand honestly, I mean, barely scathed, if not become more popular because of some of the political statements they make, which is, I mean, pretty admirable of a company to do in the first place. And that kind of, if you're wearing Nike, um, when you wear it, it makes you feel like you are someone who's able to do that. And so that's how wearing the logo and having that brand on your shirt makes you're wearing something more than Nike when you wear that check mark or the swoosh. So that's something that's really strong for them.
Completely. And Clemson still backs Nike too on all of our Clemson football uniforms, basketball. We got Nike in the house. So I think that Clemson has strong ties to Nike as a brand as a whole too, just because of their loyalty. And Clemson Tiger, we share pride in everything for our community. And I feel like it's the same with Nike. They just have a really strong community where people are just prideful and really appraise them. And I don't think that's going anywhere. I think people feel safe with Nike. It's just the norm. Tell me I'm wrong. Like, it's just the norm. Like, without Nike, where would the world be at this point? I feel like everybody has something Nike,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a water bottle, whether it's a hoodie. They used to have those Nike hoodies back in the day. They were all the rage. I had them. The green, you had orange, you had yellow, you had all these assorted colors. And they were fire at the time, but you outgrow them as trends kind of like come and go and like times fluctuate and everything. But I mean, Nike just stays consistent. I mean, I think everybody has a pair of white Nike socks. I mean, just saying, white Nike
Mm-hmm.
socks,
Yeah.
that's the go-to. Y'all think of any other brands that have flopped in the last few years that were sports related?
Can't say I can.
I don't know. I mean, it happens a lot more than you think. I mean, we're thinking about the tippy top of brands, but when it comes to the smaller brands, that's really where it becomes important to create a strong brand identity. None of these big brands have gotten that strong because they had a weak brand identity. And so building that's super important for all of them. So while you can't think about a giant company like uh, Nike or Adidas falling under because of a lack of brand identity, a lot of these smaller emerging um, uh, companies, it's really, really important to build that brand identity and make your customers feel like they're a part of something beyond your logo.
Hot take. Do you think that Olympic ice skaters or even gymnasts are going to start wearing aloe and Lulu? Do you think that's what's to come? Because aloe's gaining in popularity. It's kind of like Lulu's competitor right now. And I know Lulu's also kind of like it's demographically targeted at, athletes, people that are more athletic, but also it's also like everyday classwear too, in a sense. But aloe's like, hot yoga, it's like Pilates and stuff. Do you think that more like ice skaters are gonna start wearing it? Do you think in the Olympics, do you think just Olympic women in general are gonna adopt aloe? Or do you think it's just gonna stay the same? It's just always gonna be Nike and Adidas?
I
Because I
think it
mean, I
really
know
just depends on the top
Yeah.
bidder, and like it also depends on like I'm not currently sure who currently um, is the ambassador for like cheer, gymnastics, and the Olympics, but whoever's bidding the most really, that's what they're going to be wearing, and that's really important for brands as well. Because um, let's say let's say a random company, let's say Lulu is sponsoring the Olympics right now for women's gymnastics. Um, if Simone Biles is wearing Lululemon, there's going to be a bunch of young girls and young aspiring gymnasts who are going to see her wearing that and say, I want to wear Lululemon because when I wear Lululemon, I'm like Simone Biles. And so that's a big part of creating brand is sponsoring those people that people look up to and people want to be like, especially when it comes to a younger audience.
Completely. And
And so, what's that?
that's when, sorry, Collier, that's when the parasocial, interaction comes in. Because when you're wearing, when your favorite athlete's wearing, then you feel more connected to them. You feel more passionate about it, whether you want to be
Hmm.
them or not. You have stronger ties. So it becomes a parasocial connection. Would you agree?
I'd agree. All right, I think we're going to move on. We're going to get Ben Erkens on here and talk to him a little bit and see what he has to say. What's up, y'all? This is Ben Erkens, a good friend of mine, big soccer player, big pickleball player. Um, I'm Collier, that's Caleb, Mason, and Sarah. Um, I'm gonna pass over to Ben. Ben, can you just like give us a history of your athletics, where you've gone, and what you've done?
Yeah, absolutely. So I played club soccer my whole life. Two-time Gatorade Player of the Year. Got recruited to play at Clemson. Had a good time. Won a couple championships, and then busted my knee. So my career is over. No pro for me. But I now teach pickleball as a pickleball pro. So that's kind of my newfound calling athletically.
Okay, sweet. Thanks, Ben. Um, I'll start on the questions for you, man. Um, so obviously, you know what it felt like to be a collegiate athlete for soccer. You blew out your knee. What was that transition like from playing a collegiate sport to going to a sport like pickleball? And what drew you to that?
Yeah, so obviously when I got the news about my knee, I was really bummed. I mean, you spend your whole life wanting to be a pro soccer player, and then things don't work out, so you're depressed for a little while. The thing that I guess I was looking for most was a competitive filler, I would say. So, and I encourage this for anybody who's recently giving up a sport that they played their whole lives, right? Can find something else to channel your competitive nature towards. Um, for me, it's pickleball, right? I love playing the game. It's very active. It's easy to learn, but hard to get good at. And it's honestly one of the most. It's the fastest growing sport in the country. It's because it's one of the most addicting games to play. Just really fun. So being able to channel that competitive nature to that has been honestly seamless. It took me about 2 weeks where I was like lifting and running after I stopped playing. I was like, this sucks. I got to go play pickleball. So that's what I did next.
All right, I got a question. What differences did you notice between coaching a sport and playing a sport?
Yeah. So I guess I need to touch on this. So when I uh, finished playing, I decided to get my master's degree. I actually graduate in May for my master's degree. Um, And during that time, I spent about a year and a half doing private soccer training. And then I coached at the high school level as well as the collegiate level at Converse University this past fall. So it's been really cool, man. Like playing the sport obviously was a ton of fun. Um, and I loved it. And you can't help but miss it, especially when you're coaching. But you get to see things from a totally different view, right? You get to take what you've spent your whole life learning, and then hopefully get to change some lives and teach people what you've learned. And but I think the best part about it is teaching young adults, young people, the life lessons that you learned along the way. And that's been the biggest difference for me, right? When you step out on a pitch and you can't actually get out there and kick the ball around anymore, or not at the level you used to be able to, so you just have to coach. It's definitely a big mindset shift, but generally speaking, it's a different type of enjoyment, but still very very enjoyable.
Awesome. Mason?
Oh, yes. Um, so my question is, was it difficult to walk away from like soccer, and was it like easy for you to transition and embrace the new sport at all?
Yeah, I mean, man, I gotta say it was really tough, right? Like I was on track to play pro. I was starting at Clemson, number one team in the country, and I'm a man of faith, and so I felt like God was telling me this is where I'm supposed to be, right? And and then all of a sudden it just stopped one day. I'm like, wow, my knee hurts. What's going on? And next thing you know, I have cartilage damage, and there's no pro. I'm operate at 80% athletic capacity of what I used to be, basically. Um, so it was really tough initially, and then I tried to play through it for a little while, played like half a season after that. Had shots in my knee every other week for 15 weeks straight. Um, and it was tough. And mentally it starts to drain on you. But once I finally separated myself from my past, and kind of shifted my priorities around, I think I put soccer above everything. And that's not a good way to live, especially because soccer is temporary, as you guys can imagine. But when I found pickleball, initially I was like, okay, this is cool, this is fun. Um, but it honestly has very much so filled that competitive void in my life. Um, but at the same time, I put sports where they're supposed to be in my life, if that makes sense. Um, I'm not trying to play professional pickleball and train 6 days a week and dedicate every last uh, ounce of energy that I have to the game. I'm just able to enjoy sports with my friends, and that's, I think, what it's really all about.
Exactly.
Awesome.
So I got a question. Given that you were a national champion in 2021, which is insane. Oh, by the way, it's only been done like what, one other time, perhaps? I could be wrong. Nobody flame me. Anyways, what was your recruiting process like going from, high school to college? Like, was it a tedious process? What did you undergo? Did you have any challenges that kind of like threw you off a little bit, or what exactly was that like? We're just kind of curious to know like some insight about it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm happy to share. So I actually started the recruiting process in eighth grade. So pretty early. I went to an Anderson camp, I went to a Clemson camp, and I went to a Furman camp. And I knew I wanted to stay in the state of South Carolina. I knew I was a decent player, and had a level of belief in myself, but didn't really realize it yet. And then as times went on, actually at that Clemson camp, I was like, there's no way I'm going to come here. Like, I'm just not going to be good enough. There's 600 kids at this Clemson ID camp. And I'm a small fish in a small pond is what I thought. Next thing you know, my mom signs me up as a sophomore in high school to come to the camp. And I guess I played well. I had definitely grown as a player, I think, from my eighth grade year to sophomore year, and started to develop athletically, I think, and that really helped me. But um, like it wasn't always like hey, this is point A to point B. I'm going to Clemson. I'm just going to be good enough, and they're going to recruit me. It was a long process. I actually almost committed to Furman. That was like my number one school my whole life, and I always lived like 5 minutes away. I was best friends with the head coach's son, so it was pretty tough. But Clemson showed interest off the camp. They came to our preseason over at CISA, and which is the club that I was playing at. And next thing you know, they offered me, and that's one of those things that you can't turn down, right? So, yeah,
That's
yeah, the hard work brought me there, but you have to have a level of connection and a little bit of luck, and a little bit of kind of, I guess, doing the right things to get the right results, I guess, is the best way I would probably put it.
Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
appreciate that tape. Seriously.
Yeah.
So obviously you had Gatorade Player of the Year twice. You're the man. We get it. That recruitment process for someone like you is definitely different than some of the other people trying to get to college, where more of the outreach is coming to you rather than you reaching out as often.
Sure.
So obviously you changed your mind from Furman to Clemson. Currently we're talking about, branding and class. What about the Clemson brand, put you over the edge for Clemson? what about the Clemson culture put you over the edge compared to, let's say, a Furman or an out of state that that offered you as well?
Yeah, I that's a good question. It it wasn't necessarily as much the culture or the brand as it was more personal goal for me, I guess. The I loved Furman. I loved what they were all about. The program, the culture was really great. And I had a couple other offers. I kind of shut down anything outside of the state, like off the rip, because I knew I wanted to stay somewhere closer to home. But I had offers from Wofford, South Carolina, Coastal. And the biggest thing for me, I think, was, okay, I want to be a pro soccer player. What's going to get me there with the most success rate? And, really, I picked Clemson because they were a better program. They were competing for national championships and ACC championships. And that, I think, obviously impacts the brand of Clemson, right? And I mean, I was a Clemson fan since I was like 2 years old. You know what I mean? Like I love Clemson. I've always been a Clemson fan, and so I don't know. Maybe when that big fish calls and they say, "Hey, we want you. Let's go." That's the tough part to turn down. But they're only that way because of their branding, and because of Clemson and what they've built to become such a powerhouse athletically. So there's an aspect in there for sure.
Sweet.
So another question I have is like, how do you, now that like you're with pickleball, how do you think what was the place called? Pickleball in Greenville?
It's called Pickle Park, technically PKL Park.
PKL Park, sorry.
Yeah.
How do you think PKL Park brands itself as like a company? Like, what do you think? Like, what are you trying to say to like the people who want to come there?
Yeah, no. So I would say, generally speaking, our vibe is very. There's something for everybody, I guess is the best way to put it. That's kind of our idea. PKL stands for Pickleball, Kitchen, and Leisure. So obviously the pickleball kind of speaks for itself. The kitchen, we have 3 restaurants, and then the leisure is kind of everything else around it, right? We've got a 20-foot TV wall, cornhole, ping pong, 5,000 square feet of green space, kids section. So when you bring your family, which is our main demographic, really, um, you know, mom and dad can go play pickleball, or the kids can go play pickleball. Um, they can grab a drink up at the bar and eat some food with the family. Like, it's kind of the ideal spot for families. And so I think that's our main push in terms of marketing. Is we have a lot of different programming that goes on, but it's all centered around this idea of like, hey, we got something for you. We got something for the 4-year-old. We got something for the 80-year-old grandma. You know what I mean? Like, we've got something for everybody. So demographically, I think is our biggest strength. So from a marketing standpoint and a branding standpoint, we really try to hit on that more than anything. If that answers your question.
Oh yeah, it does.
So another question I have for you is, what kind of advice would you have for athletes in a similar position as to you, like transitioning out of college sports and trying to figure out their next step into like the realm of like something completely new to them?
Yeah, well, let me say this first, right? So I initially wanted to play pro. I wanted to get my master's degree and become an athletic director if that didn't work out. That was my original plan. Okay. From there, I went on to want to work. I went on to work at IPTE. So I fundraised, and I thought I wanted to be in fundraising, working major gifts. From there, I was like, screw this. This sucks. I don't want to do this. I was like, I'm going to go be a college coach. So I started down that route. I actually interviewed for the Clemson assistant coaching position. It was down to me and one other guy. The other guy got it. And that would have changed the trajectory of my life forever, 100%. And And then next thing you know, I'm coaching at Converse, kind of thinking, okay, what's going to be next? I got my foot in the door with coaching. Let's see. And then something pops up with pickleball, and now I'm doing pickleball. So the point, I guess, is it's good to try things. Don't be afraid to try things. Don't be afraid if it's not exactly where you want to be at that moment. If you work hard and you do the right things and you believe in yourself and you believe in your capabilities, then eventually a door is going to open up and you end up in a really good spot. And call it luck, call it whatever you want to call it. But I think I landed where I am now after a series of different changes and things that maybe weren't exactly what I wanted it to be, but I ended up where I was supposed to be because I just kept working hard and I kept believing in myself and I kept, just doing the right thing every day. And consistency is probably the number one thing I would ever tell anybody in life, because anybody can do the right thing one day. Anybody can have a good attitude one day, and then the next day they're different. Not a lot of people can do the same thing every single day, and that's what people will learn to trust. And it also gives you the reliability to believe in yourself, because you know that you can do this, you can do something every day.
If a coaching position was to open back up for Clemson for assistant, would you go try out for it? Given, you were Player of the Year, Gatorade Player of the Year twice, so you have an extensive background, obviously 2021 national champ, so you would be like perfect fit for that, especially being Player of the Year twice. Would you ever like go back and like try for coaching if there was a chance, but still do pickleball? Like if the opportunity did arise, would you go back and try it?
It's tough. I wouldn't say never, because there may be a moment in which I do want to get back into it. I would definitely say not right now. I really enjoy what I get to do. I get my title at Pickle Park, PKL Park, is basically customer experience director. Okay, so I do all of our events, partnerships, customer service, and just kind of that side of things. My job is literally to help people have fun at a park. Like, it's freaking awesome. And then I get to teach a little pickleball on the side and get to do that as well. And so I'm in a really good spot. I don't think I'd really trade it for much. I mean, I love Clemson. I'll always love Clemson, but I'm pretty happy to be where I'm at in Greenville. And I also love Greenville just as much. So, yeah, I would say not never, but definitely not right now for sure.
Right.
Awesome. All right, Ben, I'm going to end it off. It's going to be a final question.
Okay.
Obviously, you've been playing soccer your whole life, pretty much at the highest level possible. You've had some pretty good teammates. You've played against some pretty good teams. What was it like to make it to Clemson, make it to the finals, and win the national championship and get to put your hands on the national championship trophy and raise it?
Yeah, it's funny. That feeling when you're actually holding the trophy and you're with your boys that you did this with is like one of the most unmatched feelings ever in the moment. But I saw this thing as from AJ Brown or somebody from the Eagles, right? And it was talking about how 2 days later he's like, I feel nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, honestly, 2 days after we won the national championship, it was like, oh, that was cool. Like, it's awesome. It is so much fun. But the thing that was most enjoyable was the journey that took us there. And those are the memories that I'll never forget. Obviously, lifting the trophy was awesome. It was an unbelievable feeling. And it's kind of a culmination of the work, not just the work you put in that season, but the work you put in your whole life. And so that is, you're enamored with joy in that moment. But yeah, I mean, the most fun I ever had was just hanging with my buddies and like, the relationships that I had with the guys and the tough summer 5 a.m. conditionings that we would have and we would suffer through together. I mean, those are the moments that I'll never forget. And it's probably the reason why that 30-second span where it was like, oh my God, we just won a national championship was so cool. and so exciting. But yeah, it's really about the journey and about the process, and that was what we focused on, and that's why we ended up winning it all.
Awesome. I think if you're on any sports team in your entire life, you could probably have a similar answer, even if you hadn't won anything before.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Ben, we appreciate you coming on. If anyone's watching, go check out Pickle Park Greenville. Meet our man Ben. He'll show you how to play some pickleball. But
Yeah.
again, we appreciate you coming on here and teaching us a few things about what you've done and all the experiences you had. So we appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Good luck with everything. And go Tigers, man. Come on.
Go Tigers.
Good to